Morning light had barely reached the cracked windows of Harbor Lane Diner when trouble surfaced. The place smelled of burnt toast and cheap coffee, the kind of corner cafe where tired workers kept their heads down. At a booth near the back sat Sarah Mitchell, her blue scrubs still carrying the weight of a 12-hour shift. She looked drained, hair pulled into a loose bun, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't really drinking from. At her feet, Atlas, her German shepherd, lifted his head first. Across the room, a young waitress, Emily Chen, was pinned between two men. One blocked her path. The other leaned so close she had nowhere to breathe. "Don't play stupid," the taller one hissed. "You owe us. Today." Emily tried to step back, voice cracking. "I told you. I don't have anything left." The man's hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough for Sarah to hear the gasp from where she sat. No one looked up. No one planned to get involved. But something shifted inside Sarah. Sharp, quiet, dangerous. Exhaustion slipped off her shoulders as she rose from her seat, Atlas moving with her, eyes locked on the two men. This wasn't just breakfast anymore. This was the moment everything changed. If you believe silence helps the wrong side, like this video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales. What happens next will stun you. The moment Sarah stepped away from her table, the diner shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a small ripple of tension spreading across the room like everyone felt something was about to break. Atlas stayed close to her leg, silent but alert. His gaze locked on the two men who still held Emily in place. Emily's voice trembled as she tried again to pull her wrist free. "Please, I swear I'll pay next week. My mom's treatment." The taller man, the one gripping her, leaned in closer. "Your mom doesn't matter to me. What matters is you pay us on time." The words snapped something inside Emily. Her jaw clenched, but the fear in her eyes betrayed the bravado she tried to show. She wasn't a fighter. She'd never had the chance to be one. Life had pinned her down long before these men did. Sarah stopped a few feet away. Her voice was steady, carrying just enough force to cut through the air without raising the volume. "Let her go." The shorter man, the one blocking Emily's path, scoffed. "Lady, go sit down. You don't want trouble." Sarah didn't blink. "I didn't ask what I want. I said let her go." The taller one finally turned his head, studying her scrubs, her tired posture, the dog at her side. "You're a nurse," he said with lazy confidence. "Not a cop." Atlas lowered his head, not growling, just watching, calculating. Emily looked between them, breath shaking. "Please don't," she whispered to Sarah. "They get worse when someone—" "I know," Sarah said softly. "That's why I'm here." The taller man's fingers tightened around Emily's wrist. The small wince she couldn't hide hit Sarah like an old memory. Another face, another place, a moment she'd sworn she wouldn't repeat. Her body shifted, weight centered, every muscle moving into alignment the way it once had in sand and heat half a world away. The shorter man noticed it. "Marcus," he muttered under his breath. "She's not just some nurse." But his brother wasn't listening. Predators rarely listened when arrogance had already convinced them they were untouchable. "Last chance," Sarah warned. Marcus smirked. "Here's mine. Walk away." Atlas took half a step forward, waiting for a signal he knew might come any second. Sarah didn't give the men time to reconsider. When Marcus shifted his stance, she recognized the movement immediately. Pressure, control, dominance. She'd seen it too many times. She moved first. Not fast, not reckless. Controlled. Her hand closed around Marcus's wrist, twisting just enough to break his grip without breaking bone. Emily stumbled backward into the counter, her breath sucked out in shock rather than pain. Marcus cursed and swung at Sarah. She stepped aside, redirecting the momentum the way she'd been taught. "Use their weight, not yours." His arm glanced past her, and she caught it, turned her hips, and sent him crashing toward the floor. The diner gasped, forks pausing mid-air, chairs scraping back, but no one stepped in. They didn't need to. Tony lunged, reaching into his jacket. Sarah didn't wait to see what he pulled. Atlas reacted before she moved, One sharp bark, a deep warning that froze Tony in place. The bark wasn't wild or reckless. It was measured, trained, the kind of sound that reminded anyone with sense that this dog wasn't a pet. Tony hesitated, hand hovering over the half-drawn switchblade at his waist. Sarah's voice cut through the standoff. "If you pull that, you won't leave this diner standing." It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Tony's eyes flicked to Atlas, then to Emily, then to Marcus groaning on the ground. "We're wasting time," he snapped. "Finish her." But when he lunged again, Sarah was already moving. She caught his arm mid-motion, twisted, and pinned him face-first against a table so quickly the customers barely saw the transition. The blade clattered to the floor. Tony grunted, furious. "You think this means anything? You think we don't know where she lives?" Sarah pressed his arm harder until he stopped struggling. "You won't be visiting anyone after today." Marcus staggered to his feet and charged again, but Atlas intercepted this time, standing between Sarah and the attacker, teeth bared but not biting. Marcus froze, inches from a mistake he knew he wouldn't walk away from. "Call the police," Sarah said, not looking away from the brothers. A woman near the window finally grabbed her phone with trembling fingers. Another man locked the door. Someone else gently guided Emily into a booth. The fear in the diner shifted, no longer aimed at the brothers but at the possibility that things might get even worse before help arrived. Marcus spit on the floor. "You just bought yourself a funeral." Sarah tilted her head, calm. "I've heard better threats from teenagers in trauma units." His rage snapped like a cord pulled too tight. "You don't know who we are." She stepped closer, eyes unwavering. "I know exactly who you are. Two grown men who terrorize a waitress for money because you're too pathetic to earn it." Silence swallowed the room. Marcus looked ready to swing again, but sirens wailed outside. The blue and red lights splashed across the windows, turning the diner into a stage where the villains had finally been cornered. Police stormed in, weapons drawn but lowered when they saw Sarah holding both men immobilized. The officers separated the brothers, cuffed them, and gathered statements. Emily's hands shook as she repeated what had happened. Every time she faltered, Sarah stood beside her, not speaking for her, just steadying her with presence. When the officers shoved Marcus toward the door, he twisted back and shouted, "You don't get it. We run this neighborhood." The lead officer laughed once, dry and cold. "Not anymore." Outside, the brothers were shoved into separate cars. Their screams echoed off brick and pavement, but no one in the diner flinched. For the first time in months, maybe years, Emily exhaled without fear gripping her lungs. She turned to Sarah. "Why did you help me?" Sarah picked up Atlas's leash but didn't move yet. "Because someone should have helped you long before today." Emily's voice broke. "They said no one would believe me." "They will now," Sarah said. "And you won't face them again." But the story didn't flatten into relief. Climbed again. Later that afternoon, detectives uncovered surveillance footage linking Marcus and Tony to a string of extortion crimes across 3 districts. More victims came forward. Baristas, mechanics, night shift clerks, most of them young, underpaid, or outsiders in their own communities. Some had been threatened, some beaten, some forced to choose between safety and survival. But this time the cycle cracked, because one person stood up. Because one moment interrupted months of fear. Because silence finally had a rival. When Sarah was called to give her formal statement, the precinct buzzed with quiet admiration. Officers shook her hand. Some recognized her from previous emergency calls. A few even knew her reputation in the Marines. But Sarah wasn't interested in praise. She just wanted Emily safe. Across the city, the district attorney fast-tracked charges. Extortion, coercion, assault, possession of a weapon, intimidation, attempted robbery. The brothers arrived in court with swollen egos but shaken bodies. Emily sat behind the prosecutor, clutching a tissue, her mother beside her, hand on her shoulder. Marcus glared at Sarah as he was led in, wrists chained. She didn't look away. The judge read the charges one by one, each count echoing through the room like a hammer. Then the verdict landed with the weight of every voice the brothers had silenced. Guilty. On all counts. Emily covered her mouth, tears finally falling for the right reasons. Marcus snapped. You think this is over? You think you've won? The judge didn't raise his voice. This is over because you never learned how to use power without destroying people. And now you'll learn accountability. The sentence, 12 years. No parole. Tony slumped. Marcus shouted. Neither outcome changed what mattered most. For the first time, both brothers finally faced the consequences they had spent years avoiding. As the bailiff dragged Marcus out, he locked eyes with Sarah one last time. Her expression didn't hold triumph, only truth. You lost, she said quietly. 'Cause you chose fear. And fear always collapses. That night the diner reopened. Emily returned to work for the first time without looking over her shoulder every few minutes. Customers left bigger tips. Someone sent flowers. Someone else dropped off a card that read you deserved better long before today. Sarah stopped by only briefly. She didn't want attention. She just wanted Emily to see that life had a chance to return to normal. Emily poured her a cup of coffee. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Sarah replied. You survived. Atlas rested his chin on Emily's leg, accepting a grateful scratch behind the ears. The world felt heavier and lighter all at once, scarred where necessary, healed where possible. And the brothers. Their story was no longer whispered in fear. It was printed in the local paper's crime section, a headline that made the community breathe easier. Extortion duo sentenced after diner confrontation. Victims finally heard. But the full price they paid, the humiliation, the exposure, the long years ahead, had only just begun. And that is where the next chapter waits. Because villains don't stop when they're caught. They stop when their power is stripped away completely. And for Marcus and Tony Delgado, that reckoning was only getting started. In the weeks that followed, life at Harbor Lane Diner slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But for Sarah, something subtle had shifted. She could feel it in the quiet moments, during late-night rounds at the hospital, or when Atlas rested his head on her knee after a long shift. Protecting Emily hadn't erased the shadows she carried, but it softened them. It reminded her that the part of her she once tried to bury still had purpose. Emily, meanwhile, found a steadier voice. She walked into work without flinching at the sound of the door. She laughed more. She planned for things she once thought were too far away. And every time she caught Sarah's eye across the diner, gratitude was replaced with something stronger. Confidence. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the row of storefronts, Emily slipped a small envelope onto Sarah's table. Inside was a photo, the two of them standing outside the courthouse, Atlas sitting proudly between them. On the back, Emily had written only 4 words. You changed my life. Sarah smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, the kind a person wears when they finally make peace with the weight they've been carrying. Outside, Atlas brushed against her leg, ready to walk. The night felt calmer than it had in a long time, the streetlights glowing like small reminders of the good that still existed. And as they stepped into the cool air, it was clear. Courage hadn't just protected one waitress. It had reopened a door Sarah once believed was closed forever. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales. Your support helps these powerful stories find the people who need them most.